podcast where we talk about staying anchored in biblical reality within the current of modern culture. I'm Michael Cleary, and with me is Wade Thomas. We both work for Christ the King Church in Fort Thomas, Kentucky, which makes this podcast possible. Wade, I'm going to quarterback today's episode because you had a busy week, and so I've done the prep on it. But this was prompted by an email that was sent in to a Current Reality listener. So I'll kick it over to you to kind of set the table for us as we get going.
Yeah. Yep. And thank you for quarterbacking, by the way. This email was signed DJ Trump. I don't know who that is. I'm just kidding. It came in from
47.
Yeah. It came in from a good man that we know. So I'll read. Let me just start reading, and I may stop at a certain point just for the sake of time. But I'm going to start reading. Wade, Michael, what are your thoughts on the black subculture thing? And I should insert here what he's talking about. There was a recent dust up online between a couple of men who most people in our church respect, Brian Sauvé and Doug Wilson. The debate was basically Brian Sauvé had made in a podcast, his press, New Christendom Press, had shared a clip of him saying that somebody, a black person, obviously could become a member of his church, but not
if he wanted to participate or celebrate black culture.
Yeah, black culture. And what he meant specifically there was sexual sin, all of the things that you're going to see in the typical inner city neighborhood. And so Doug Wilson then wrote a blog post interacting with, which Doug's blog posts are more like essays, and they're very well written. But Doug was interacting with that point, and I shared Doug's blog post in the Herald that next week.
The Herald is a weekly email of resources that King's Domain sends
Correct.
out. King's Domain is our ministry. Current Reality is part of that.
Yes, thank you. So Doug interacted with Brian's point, basically granting some of there are problems in black culture in the inner city, serious moral, spiritual problems in black culture in the inner city in particular. But I think in a fatherly way, sort of, hey, there's things you didn't say that are worth saying. And what you did say unnecessarily, leaves out some of the important things and almost makes some of those seem like they don't matter.
Yeah.
So for instance, just one thing that came to mind is Doug was like, so do we only, as white people, American white people, do we only have to deal with George Washington, or is Gavin Newsom a part of our legacy? Yes. So if we're going to say black culture is Tupac, but not Thomas Sowell, is white culture only George Washington and John Adams, or are we responsible for Margaret Sanger and Gavin Newsom too? Yeah. And things like that, where I think Doug is just, Doug's not afraid of being called a racist. Doug's been called a racist a million times. So his voice has a particular layer of credibility for good Christian men, because it's like, this is not a squish.
Right.
And yet he's saying, hey, Brian, not sure you threaded the needle well.
Yeah, and I have in our notes here to tease out some of that controversy later on in the show. So we can detail it a bit.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so sorry, I just hit pause on reading this email to kind of give you what our listener was saying what he was referring
context.
to. That's good. So he said, our emailer said, I listened to Brian Sauvé's entire 2 podcasts on the subject, and I mostly agreed with what he was saying based on the Cretans passage in Titus. All Cretans are liars. And in that podcast, Brian mentioned he's calling out the sins of his particular church all the time. So Brian granted the point, I'm not only calling out black culture stuff, I'm calling out the sins of our church here in Utah as well. Brian also mentioned the common sins of white people in the podcast, although that part didn't go viral. One thing I'll just say here real quick, New Christendom Press picked the clip they did and shared the clip they did. So I don't think, in this case, I don't think you can do the whole, in context, defense, because you chose what you chose.
Yes, and we'll get to that in a bit too, like anti-fragile marketing.
Yeah.
Is That's a thing.
So our listener said, in Wilson's response, he seemed to agree with Sauvé in principle, but also strongly rebuke him. He mentioned his tenure in writing. Doug Wilson mentioned his tenure in writing on race issues, seemed to tell Sauvé to stop hyper-focusing on the Jews, the need to equally mention the horrible sins of white people, and to equally use one of their worst representatives of sinfulness of a subculture, with Gavin Newsom being his example. I also listened to the black man, Kevin Briggins is here who he's talking about. I also listened to the black man that Wilson mentioned in his response. He, Kevin Briggins, black Christian guy, solid guy, gave a very sound response to Brian as well, and mentioned that 2/3 of black people don't even live in the inner city, and even those who do, most of them hate the crime that happens there too. So our listener then gets to his 3 questions. I guess my specific questions are, number 1, any hesitations with consuming content from Sauvé and or his church after all this? Question number 2, how should I think about the need to protect my family while living in or near a mostly black community, while also not living paranoid and or failing to actually minister to them, meaning my black neighbors? And number 3, how should Christians think about the black culture today? So he asked those questions, and we probably won't give like full-throated answers here to all 3, but it was a very honest, helpful email, and I should tell you that's part of why we're having this episode. This is actually a live issue for us. We're not doing this podcast in like the middle of rural Iowa or Nebraska. So we're on the Kentucky side, but it's the greater Cincinnati area. Both Michael and I actually live in Cincinnati on the other side of the river in the state of Ohio. And it's a pretty mixed, culturally, it's a pretty mixed bag here. So you've got pockets of greater Cincinnati that are very suburban white. You've also got neighborhoods the public school I taught in, when we had our first child, there was not a single white student. I had zero white students in the entire school.
Wow. So,
and that's a neighborhood that is like 10 minutes from my house.
Yeah.
So these are like live questions in the areas in which we live. We're not in Utah or Nebraska or something, or, in 100% black areas either. We're in Cincinnati is probably more like Pittsburgh or Baltimore, or
racially, it's pretty evenly divided
inside the city.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's right. Inside the city limits, it's.
I don't know if it's 50-50, but it's pretty close to parity.
And Michael lives in the heart of the city. I live like 2 miles probably from the city limits, but I live walking distance from neighborhoods that are outside the city limits, but are majority black. And it's all, my area feels kind of like suburban Detroit or suburban Baltimore or something. It's old city, old suburban Cincinnati. So anyway, this is a live issue for us. These things have real pastoral implications for us. So can I hand the ball to you, quarterback, and me be the tight end again?
Sure.
Or be the tight end.
So I'll say this, like whenever you suggested this as a topic, I thought, well, that's charged. It's emotionally charged. I want to be fair. We have experience in a number of ways, like in our ministry, but also where we live, the context that we're ministering in. I will say that I'm a little nervous about talking about it because because these are things that are so complicated that there's always a degree of. And so on the one hand, we know that there's like squish evangelicals that want to nuance the most clear things to death. And then there are other things that are truly nuanced. I mean, there are things that require a good degree of clarity of thought, making proper distinctions so that you're not just being careless and reckless with the way you speak. So yes, we're in Cincinnati, greater Cincinnati metro area. Significant population of black and white people in this area. And we have plenty of experience. And I'll share a little bit here in a moment about my own experience with what Sauvé identified as black culture. In the last couple months, Cincinnati's been in the news a lot for bad reasons because of increase of violence. A couple of viral videos of people. So there's a couple of videos. One where there's like an old white guy just walking down the street, and somebody just out of nowhere just come up behind him, sucker punches him, knocks him out cold, and runs off. Yeah. There was one that got a lot of attention where there was basically a street brawl where a white man and a white woman who, from what I understand, don't even know each other, were both like, beaten pretty badly by, a group of black guys, young black guys. So as you mentioned, I do live in the, whatever inner city is. I mean, I live in the city for sure. Whether or not you would call it the inner city is, I don't know how you define that, but
I mean, if I flew a drone over your house, I would see the city skyline if I got to a certain height.
Yeah, I mean, it's there. I mean, like, we don't live in like the worst neighborhood in town, but that is right all around us, basically. So to give you an example of this, I don't know if I've ever shared this story on the podcast, but it's been a while since I've talked about it. But whenever we first moved to Cincinnati, we moved here to plant a church. We wanted to plant an inner city church, so we moved into our house where we are. And about 6 months after we moved in, there was a bullet that flew into our house and landed in my children's bedroom. Did you know this?
I don't think I knew that.
Oh man, how did I not ever tell you this story before? My kids were, I had a boy and a girl that shared a bedroom. And so they were in the same room together. And where the bullet landed was literally like 12 inches from where she was laying in bed, my daughter. So it's like, went through the window, it was really cold. I noticed it walking into the bedroom that morning, cause it was like super, very, very, very cold that night. So I walk in there and I'm like, why is it so cold in here? The heat is on. And it was because this bullet had, broken the window and landed in her, like right by her bed. In fact, I didn't notice the bullet at first because when she woke up, she arranged her stuffed animals on her bed like she would always do, and she put a stuffed animal on her bed that covered up the bullet hole. And so I didn't even see it for quite some time, and like an hour or so later, just looking around trying to figure things out. So that's our neighborhood. That's not it's common. We hear gunshots all the time. Once a week, once every 2 weeks, we hear gunshots out in our neighborhood. It's common. People shot and killed all the time within a mile of our house, within a half a mile of our house. We live next to Over the Rhine, which is one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the city.
When I was growing up, I think it was the second most dangerous neighborhood in America after Compton.
Yes.
In the early 90s.
Yeah, and so this neighborhood has a reputation, and there's a whole backstory why we went to this neighborhood, but that was part of it. And I guess that is relevant to the story. It's like the impetus for the ministry context we chose was a desire to bring the gospel to a difficult area. So my early ministry, there was a lot of focus on racial unity, I wanted to have a church that would be comprised of a population similar to the neighborhood I was in. There are reasons why that. One of the things that really affected that over time was the more I got to know Black Christian leaders in town, the more I was told the same thing over and over again, which is essentially the way to reach Black people is through Democrat politics. And I'm like, well, I'm a Christian.
Right.
I'm not going to get on board with what they teach. I think it's wrong and unbiblical.
Let's just, at the very least, let's just start with abortion.
Yes.
They support a policy that murders lots of Black people who are just very small and inside wombs.
Yes. And I was like, I just can't do that. And so that became less of a primary focus, but certainly the heart has always been there. So I live around it, and it's ministry context. Is there anything else from your experience that you'd want to share about it?
I mean, there's probably stuff that's useful. So I don't know. I'll just start talking. This is a podcast. This isn't an essay. So I'm going to start talking. And if you're like, I don't like this guy, then fast forward through it. I say that because biographical stuff I know can sometimes be boring. Regardless, here's a few things that may be coherent or fit with the topic. One, my dad so I've always lived in Cincinnati. Cincinnati has been sort of this sort of makeup for a long, long time. It's a city right on the border between North and South. It had tension in the Civil War over that. There were lots of like copperheads and lots of Blacks would move here during the. So I mean, this city has had this makeup, this sort of not being all white or all Black for a long, long time. My dad. I'm third generation Cincinnati, and he became a drug addict in the 70s, dropped out of high school, was saved out of drug addiction in 83 and was in the inner city and basically my life has been colored by his desire to minister to drug addicts and be in the inner city for most of my life. He had a church plant in Over the Rhine called Jesus is Over the Rhine, next door to Tucker's Restaurant. I remember the front of that place getting shot up one time.
Yeah.
We have always kind of been in that sort of a space. Grew up in the charismatic world also. So a lot of the churches I grew up in, Pentecostal churches I grew up in, were, if not majority black, half black, half white. And then we ended up moving for a while where he was a jail chaplain in Springfield, Ohio, which is a very decaying urban area. Think like Toledo, Youngstown, Akron, that kind of a thing. And so we lived in the worst part of Springfield, Ohio. I remember, my dad having to rescue a prostitute one time from her pimp. I remember a pimp chasing a prostitute through our back, or my dad tells me about, I was on the swing set swinging as like a 5 or 6 year old pimp chasing prostitute through the backyard while I'm swinging and apologize. Sorry, Pastor Thomas, as he's chasing a prostitute through our backyard.
Wow.
So my life has not been lived in like, seventh heaven kind of context. And to this day, so I live in, it's the west side of Cincinnati, which is predominantly Roman Catholic, but it's pretty close to like the city limits, and it's just very, it's what you might, if you came to my house or drove up and down my street. There was a shooting a couple months ago down the street from inside the house, a couple of houses down from us. You would think like, if you'd never been to Cincinnati, okay, Cincinnati's kind of like Detroit or something.
Yeah. Well, the point in going over this narrative is to demonstrate that we're speaking as people that are bought in, and we've got skin in the game regarding the people that we live near. I was asking for prayer at my small group the other night, just because I would just say, I feel a bit exposed where I live.
Asking prayer about where you live.
Asking prayer for myself, because I feel more. It's just there's danger there, and I'm feeling it more because when the kids are little, then I'm like, I am looking out for them. But now my kids are teenagers and older. And so they're out on their own. And so I had 2 kids that work for an ice cream shop in Over the Rhine, this neighborhood. And because it's close and because it's expensive to park down there, we would drop them off at work, and then we would drive. My wife and I would take 2 cars, and then after the meters, they don't do meters after 9 p.m., we'd find street parking for free, leave a car there for the child, and then come home. Mm-hmm. So then after my kids get off work, they would go out onto the street of Over the Rhine, 11:30, 11:45 on a Saturday night, whatever, to find the car. And this is a very, very dangerous neighborhood where people have been shot and killed not infrequently in this neighborhood. And my kids are out walking around this neighborhood. Yeah. And there's a part of me as a father that felt like I am really getting more and more uncomfortable with this. And so this is my neighborhood. This is my city. It's a place I've given my life to serving and ministering in. So what I want to do is just lay out some facts. And I don't want to lay out some facts of the controversy that Wade alluded to earlier. And so I'm trying to be fair. Mm-hmm. So just listener, I hope you just understand. I'm trying to be as fair and objective as I can. This is not commentary or analysis. These are just facts. And I'll lay out a few facts, and then we can go through some thoughts after that.
And can I say real quick, just the word controversy? So when you and I use that word, we are talking about a good faith debate between.
Yes.
So this is a good man, a good pastor named Brian Sauvé, and a good man, a good pastor named Doug Wilson. And these are ideas or truth claims that let's debate the merit of the truth claim. What I have known, and you and I came out of a sort of Christianity where controversy basically was somebody feels bad. So what you just said was controversial, and by controversial, I mean bad. What you said was bad because somebody feels bad. You shouldn't have said it It's bad because somebody feels bad.
Right.
And so controversy was almost used as a pejorative.
Yes.
To be like off limits. You shouldn't do that. You should repent.
Like controversial figure Donald Trump.
Right, exactly.
It's a way to kind of cast shade on somebody.
Right. And we're not playing that game. Truth matters. So when we say controversy, we're talking about a debate, and let's figure out what is true and what we should do about what is true.
Yeah. Okay, so let's be attorneys here. Here are the facts of the case that I think are undisputed. Here's one. There are a lot of viral clips on the internet of black people committing violent acts against white people. The news media doesn't cover it, and presumably because it doesn't fit the narrative they want to promote. So a lot of the clips it's contained within social media for the most part. Mm-hmm. And then if they reach a certain crescendo, then the news media will cover it. But usually it has to spill out the banks of social media. But for the most part, it's contained.
Whereas if a white police officer were to commit any act of violence, justified, which they almost always are, or unjustified against a black person, that would have been center stage.
ABC, NBC,
right.
CNN.
It's going to be talked about all the time.
Yeah. So like there's one inflection point that in particular has gotten everybody's attention is the murder of Irina Zarutska.
Yeah.
So if you're not familiar with this, a lot of people know this, but not everybody follows this stuff closely. It's a Ukrainian young woman, so she'd be a white woman. She was riding on a public transit kind of subway car in Charlotte, and she was sitting there. And there's a video of this, and that's why we can see it.
It's one of the worst things I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah, and not because of the gore,
right? It's
just the brazen evil of it.
Yeah.
So she's sitting there. She just gotten off a shift at a pizza shop, and she's looking at her phone, sitting in her seat by herself, minding her own business. There is a large black man sitting in the seat behind her, and then, for no reason, unprovoked completely, he stands up, he stabs her in the neck 3 times. And this clip is not as widely distributed, but it is out there, where he stabs her 3 times, and then she turns and looks up at him. So there's this moment where she's in shock. She looks up at him with this look of utter horror at this man, and she's sitting, and he's a tall, big, foreboding black man, and she's looking up at him with this like, what did you just do? Probably not even having processed what had happened to her.
Right.
And then within
seconds, I think.
Yeah, within seconds, she kind of slumps over in her seat
because her whole throat. I mean, she.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there are a number of people sitting around, and all the people in the frame, I'm pretty sure, are black also. And nobody came to her aid. Nobody did anything. Somebody did come and was filming with a cell phone. By the time somebody did come to help her, it was too late. In that longer clip, you get some insight into the motive of the guy who did it. And he could be heard mumbling off camera, but you could hear him say, "I got that white girl." And so he's a black guy, clearly targeted her because she's a white girl. Said, "I got that white girl." So that's one inflection point, but we could spend 2 hours going through a number of similar videos that depict similar things. So that's one point. A lot of viral clips on the internet, black violence against white people. Second point, there are not similar clips of white violence against black people. The ones that can be found are certainly much more rare. And whenever anything that does happen you would hear about it,
right? And
it'll be broadcast mainstream.
And if you are immediately thinking, of all of the supposed instances of white police officers doing this against black, you need to look into each of those cases.
Yeah,
and you will come to the conclusion there is no widespread problem of white police officers hunting innocent black people and shooting them.
Yeah,
that's
so
not occurring.
The body cam thing, it's now basically standard policy in every police department to have body cams. And what one would have expected is that these body cams would document widespread systemic racism, open season on black people or whatever. And what it has actually done is it has vindicated police officers in nearly every instance for, yes, they may have used violence in their job, but it was justified given the conditions.
You'll see often an assailant attacking the police officer with a raised knife or running at the police officer with some sort of weapon. So okay, so here's reality of, okay, now what do we do with this?
Yeah, there's one more quick point, and then commentary. So given the proportion of black people in America versus white people in America, the numbers, I think black people are in the low teens as a percentage.
Yeah, I think it's 13% of the population.
Yeah, something like that. And then you compare the proportions to the proportions of crime statistics. We can factually conclude that black people commit violent crimes at a much higher rate. I don't think that is an indisputed fact. Now, the conclusions that you draw from it is what the controversy is about, or the disagreement. But those, I'm trying to be as fair and objective as I can be. Those are facts. Your thoughts?
Yeah. So first off, somebody could quibble with that and be like, well, of course, there's more black people in jail because the system is systemically. You cannot be an objective person in the United States and be like, the system being racist explains away why there are more black people committing violent crimes as a higher percentage of black people committing violent crimes than white people. Like we have to deal with reality. There's no way that some systemically racist judicial system is making black people, a higher percentage of black people commit violent crimes than white people. So we have to deal with that reality. And we also have to deal with the reality that Nigerian immigrants are not committing violent crimes at the same rate as native-born black people.
So they're black,
right?
But they're not black indigenous people of color.
So this is not a skin color thing. It is clearly not a skin color thing, because you and I both know Nigerian immigrants. I've worked with Mauritanian immigrants. We know there's a huge population of Kenyan.
The pastor of the church we planted
is Nigerian, and he's one of our favorite people. And probably would have a lot to say.
Oh, he would agree.
Yes.
He would agree.
There's a huge population of Central African immigrants on my side of town. You're not seeing violent crime and gangbanging the same way you are with inner city native-born black people here in the United States. So the systemic racism is somehow not causing people from Ghana and Nigeria and Morocco to shoot and rob other people, other citizens. So what's going on here? And there's going to be a number of causes that I'm guessing we'll explore. But at the top of the list, any objective person has to say fatherlessness is a key here.
100%.
And the school that I was talking about where I taught at, where there was not a single white student. I think we might have had in a K-8 school, there might have been 15 Hispanic kids. The rest were all black. The number of kids in any of my 7th and 8th grade classes who had married mom and dad, I mean, I'm going to ballpark it at probably less than 20 students across all my classes had married mom and dad living together in the home. And I've told this story many times, but I remember the most troublesome kid I had, who I liked. I like troublesome kids. I remember doing with this kid and a couple of other his students. We did at the Christmas play that Run DMC Christmas in Hollis.
Oh yeah.
We did that together. I did that with them.
Yeah,
and he was kind of like the lead guy, and I just came out as a joke towards the end of the song. But that kid would not call my wife, who came around, once in a while with our daughter. He would not call her my wife. He would call her my girl or my girlfriend. And it took me a while to pick up on the fact that that was not a word in his lexicon. Wife was not a word in his lexicon. You cannot have that be the norm.
Yes.
Dad is not at home. Mom and dad are not married. I don't ever see my dad. My dad himself never saw his dad. You cannot have that be the norm and expect good, solid, stable behavior across generations.
You know who would agree with you? Barack
Obama. That's right. Back in the day
of 2008.
Yeah.
So, okay, so those are facts. So the question that we're discussing here is, to what do we attribute these things, and how do we talk about it in ways that are helpful and informative? And so this started with the clip that you mentioned earlier, and one of the things that stood out was something to the effect of Black culture has a violence and murder problem. This is something Brian Sauvé said. Mm-hmm. Black culture has a murder and violence problem. So that made the rounds, of course. A lot of you have like kind of your unhinged response, which is that's racist, and they're just people that emotionally react because something felt icky to them.
Right.
But I don't think that they were not necessarily reasonable interlocutors. But Kevin Briggins was. So Kevin Briggins, I don't know him well, but he and I are acquainted. We've talked a few times, and I texted him a little bit, even in preparing for this episode, just to get his take. So Kevin Briggins posted a response, and one of the big things that he talked about was just the phrase Black culture is too broad. And he said that most Black people that would not agree or would say that that's representative of their culture. And so that's something that I think is worth exploring more. It's like, what's the propriety of saying Black culture to describe the phenomena? I would say it's a cultural problem.
Yeah.
But can we say the problem of all this violence and crime is a Black culture problem? That's the question.
Yeah. So here if you were to pose this, if you were to give me two statements, one, native-born Black people, so not African immigrants, but native-born Black people, there's a higher percentage of that population that commits violent crimes and is breaking the law than of any other demographic in the United States. I'd be like, duh.
Yeah.
You read a book, or just been around America? That's true. Okay. Sentence number 2, Black culture has a crime problem. I don't think I'd be as willing to be like, yeah, absolutely, because I don't know exactly what you mean by Black culture.
Yeah.
So it is a more elastic sentence. It's not like you have to define your term a little bit. If you were to say inner city Black culture, I don't see how I could disagree with that. Yeah, that seems to be true. Inner city Black culture or street Black culture or something has a serious crime problem, because by that I know what you mean. You mean the guy on the corner, right down here in our neighborhood, in front of that big Catholic church in OTR, Liberty and Vine Street or whatever, that intersection. You're talking about like the Black guys hanging around on that culture, smoking crack, smoking dope, doing whatever they're doing, looking shady, and getting ready to make some kind of deal. And there's probably going to be gunshots at some point this week in this intersection. That's what you're talking about. You're talking about that. You're talking about inner city Detroit. You're talking about inner city Baltimore. You're talking about inner city Chicago. And yeah, there's a real problem there. But Black culture is a pretty broad term. And there are neighborhoods here in the Cincinnati area that are majority Black, where there might be a whole year without a homicide, like Woodlawn or something, where I'm like, so which one is Black culture?
Yes.
The first one I described, or the second one?
Yeah. So the question is the appropriateness of making generalizations about groups of people when the generalization does not apply to every individual within the group.
And we have to make generalizations. You are allowed to.
Yeah, we have to. Well, let me just get into this then. And so, what I'm about to share, I would say these are thoughts that I have as I'm processing this. And so we're going to process this together. And I think what we have are good biblical wisdom. And we can demonstrate that with Scripture.
But we're not preaching from a pulpit like some dogmatic assertion.
Yeah. So there's... the reason why I say it that way is just that I don't feel like I am in a good position to make dogmatic assertions, because these things are so complicated. So these are things that I think are true. These are thoughts that I have processing this, and I've got 5 thoughts here. The first one is noticing is not a sin.
Yeah.
So wisdom is built upon pattern recognition. You look in the book of Proverbs, You see, general things like train up a child in the way he will go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it. That's a general truism. That's a pattern. Kids tend to follow in the ways that they were taught, but that does not mean that there are never exceptions. So noticing is not a sin. And this goes back to the question from the email, where the email that was sent to you from a listener, he said, how should I think about the need to protect my family while living in or near a mostly black community, while also not living paranoid and or failing to actually minister to them? So I'll pose a question. I can give an answer, get your thoughts. I'll paint a scenario and then get your reflection on that. So if I am walking around in Over the Rhine and it's late at night and I see a black man coming my way, there are things that I might notice, and my brain will observe and make hundreds of little micro observations that are subconscious. And the thing my spidey sense tells me, this feels dangerous to me. And the fact that that's a black man is a relevant factor that is not wrong. Now, I would also say there's things about the way people dress and carry themselves, the way they look, the way they walk. Some things communicate, I am not a threat to you.
Right.
And other times there's a way, and I think you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, absolutely. Anybody does. Anybody listening. It takes a liberally, progressively trained mind who's been taught to be embarrassed about everything that is embarrassed. No, I don't know what you mean, Michael.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking of the movie. This movie won Best Picture, but the name escapes me. It's coming to me. But it was a movie about race and racial issues and
Crash.
stuff. That's it.
Yeah.
Yes. So at the beginning of the movie,
worst Best Picture winner ever, except maybe Shakespeare in Love. But no, I'm just kidding.
So there was a scene at the beginning where a white couple's driving through a bad part of town, and they see a couple black guys, and the wife locks the door, or no, she grabs her purse. I think that's what it is. She grabs her purse kind of tight, like somebody's going to mug her. And you're supposed to judge her for doing that. And I'm like, how dare you, you racist? And the messaging that we get through the entertainment is that if you sense danger around people that are likely to be dangerous, then you might be racist. Probably are racist.
The same movie, if it had a black guy in some all-white town in the rural South, and he locked his doors you, the viewer, would supposed to be sympathetic to that black guy.
Yeah, so
you know what I mean?
There's a pickup truck with a Confederate flag driving by, and he feels nervous. We'll be like, oh man, that poor guy's threatened.
Exactly. That's cultural conditioning. You have been taught white guy equals bad, racist, ignorant buffoon. Black guy equals poor, put upon, downtrodden Will Smith from Pursuit of Happiness.
Yeah, so we're only allowed to notice certain things, but there are other things we're not allowed to notice according to cultural programming. And I would say as Christians, we are allowed to notice. In fact, we must notice, and it is wise to pay attention. Now, that doesn't mean it's not racist if you say, I feel threatened by this person. We have to. I mean, we just have to notice it, because if we don't, we become gullible and naive. So there's a need to notice things. Now, that doesn't mean we're drawing the accurate conclusions, but it means based upon prior data and based on life experience, certain situations feel more threatening.
And being wrong isn't sinful.
That's right.
What if you thought the guy, because he looked a little shady, was a bad guy, so you cross the other side of the street, or you tell your daughter to get inside, and then it turns out, hey, he's fine.
Yeah.
You didn't sin.
Yes. Yeah, that you're just finite. Now, is it possible that there is just racial animosity where you're just assuming anytime I see black skin, I go running because I think he's going to shoot me? I mean, obviously that there are versions of that can be sinful. What we're talking about is it's not necessarily a sin, and very often Christians, out of a desire to avoid the charge of racism, will avoid noticing things.
There are Christians who are more scared of being called racist than getting shot.
Yes. Totally true.
That is so irrational. Do you not understand? You have been conditioned into thinking this word is damnation. And that is not good. That's not godly.
What is the,
to be so governed by fear of man.
And this is why our context we started with is important. It's like, I live in this area. It's like I see how people behave. I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of encounters and experiences that tell me I am wise and smart to pay attention to things, notice patterns, and I've had to give myself permission to be like, hey, I'm going to notice this. I'm not apologizing for it. This is something that I just need to do.
Yeah, and on my side of town, I mean, there's lots of I live on this sort of border between more like upper middle class, I guess, old middle class white Roman Catholic, and then as you get closer to the city, just walking distance from my house, it's more what you'd think of with inner city, and so there are point being at like the Target that I go to, there's both some shady fatherless white dudes and some shady fatherless black dudes, and I'll smell weed everywhere. Yeah. And like there's like, and Price Hill was this way. I was a part of a church plant in Price Hill. Price Hill had like an Appalachian hillbilly elegy kind of component living in it, as well as inner city black, and so it had a very similar vibe where there's like shady people with different color skin, but I know shady when I see it, and I know. You're walking that pit bull and you don't mean any good. I mean, like I remember a dude at our church in Price Hill pulling up and saying he was Jesus and he was going to come back and shoot the place up. I remember a lady, and I think that guy was a black guy. I remember a white lady, I'm pretty sure she was white, who was high, who threatened me with her umbrella. And I kind of like had to get her out of the church without touching her, because you don't want to, I don't want any of that. So I'm just kind of like arms up, pushing her towards the door. Point being, so the color of skin, especially if I know you're a native born black person, that is a data point.
Yes.
So a guy with a Nigerian accent, but brown skin, the odds that he's a gangbanger are pretty small. If I'm living in the inner city and there's a guy with black skin and he's talking like, gangster rap, the odds are higher that there's something to worry about here. If it's whatever, you get my point. And at the same time, again, in my neighborhood, if you're a white guy with your pants hanging down a little bit, or you're a white guy with like a shirt with a bunch of holes in it and stuff, and I see you walking a particular way up my sidewalk, and this does happen. Mm-hmm. The family where those gunshots happened, that was, I think, a mostly white house. Same deal. I'm like, I think I know who you are, and even if I'm wrong, I've got a wife and children I'm responsible to keep safe. I got my eye on you.
Well, I mean, I grew up in West Virginia, so it's not like I just have this spidey sense about certain black people. It's like I know trailer park,
right?
White, dangerous people. We are allowed to notice things, and so like the second thought I have here is all cultures are not the same.
Yeah.
So here's a quote from Brian Sauvé. He had a tweet. He said, all cultures and peoples are not equally sinful. Some are worse than others.
That is true.
That is true. And so some people have identifiable characteristics that can be observed and evaluated on their merits. And so when I see, inner city, I'm like, okay, there are a lot of African immigrants. There are people that are not, from the street necessarily. Mm-hmm. But I could see, if a guy is wearing a polo, a pair of jeans, and has got a belt on, and a pair of sneakers or something, and I'm like, I don't feel any more threatened by that guy than any white guy. But it is the overall picture, the overall presentation of self that communicates aggression, danger, potential violence, and it's okay to notice that. So we can evaluate different cultures, groupings of people, based on identifiable characteristics, pattern recognition, drawing some conclusions, and then conclude this culture is worse than that culture.
You as a listener, if you are over the age of 20 and honest and not so scared of man that you're afraid to answer this question or make the observation I'm about to say, you probably could tell in a gas station watching a 16-year-old boy for about a minute, how he's dressed, whether or not his mom and dad are married and together and living at home. You probably could tell with 60% or so accuracy.
Yeah.
If I did that exercise with you 100 times, and gave you truth serum so you wouldn't be afraid to answer, you could probably get with about 60% accuracy, yes, that 16-year-old boy, his parents probably are married and living together. Yeah. And so that illustrates a couple of things. Number one, melanin content in the skin is not, we're not Darwinian here. Mm-hmm. It's not like people with brown skin are stupider and people with white skin are smarter, or people with white skin are more elevated. We're not Darwinian. We know that's not true. But what that does illustrate is that there are things that happen within human beings. Are not, to use Doug Wilson's old metaphor, human beings are not little BBs that are oiled up and just sliding all around the stage of life. He's always great at metaphors. Yeah. We are connected like leaves on a tree. And so the people you live around, who your grandparents were, who your uncle, what your uncle was like, what your brothers are like, what your sisters are like, this all affects who you are and what you think is normal and what so in the South 160 years ago, it would have been scandalous for a man to be seen alone with a woman. That affected how people acted. It affected society.
And if you saw a man alone with a woman, you might draw conclusions.
Right. And so the fact that now, there is no such social pressure, it affects those of us who live within that social construct. Yeah. So, sorry, this is a really long-winded monologue here. I guess the point I'm trying to make is you can notice things about people that will, and you should notice things. If you are responsible for the safety of a wife or children, if you're responsible for your own safety, or responsible for the safety of a church, if you're responsible to interact with your neighbor and love your neighbor and care about your neighbor, and whether or not somebody's breaking into your neighbor's house, mm-hmm. like all of these things, or whether or not you want to minister to your neighbor who is himself breaking into other people's houses, all of these things, you have to observe honestly the world around you. And the culture, the environment that the person you're looking at grows up in will inevitably affect them. It will.
Yes. Okay. Well, that's good. Good word. Here, so just to recap, noticing is not a sin, number one. Number two, cultures are not all the same. Number three, cultural generalizations are biblically permissible. So Sauvé, here's a quote from him. He said, "Black culture is wicked, therefore we should rebuke him that they be sound in the faith." And then he drew a parallel to Paul, and he quoted, "Cretan culture is wicked, therefore we should rebuke them that they be sound in the faith." And he's referring to...
all Cretans are liars.
Yeah, Titus 1:12. I'll pull it up here.
And he's telling Titus, who's a pastor in Crete.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's talking about some culture that Titus isn't going to have to interact with. He's like, hey, Titus, minister among the Cretans. By the way, all liars.
Yeah. Cretans, here's Titus 1:12. Cretans are always liars, evil beasts, lazy gluttons. This testimony is true. Therefore, rebuke them sharply that they may be sound in the faith. A couple other, so like, we're still haven't settled the propriety of saying black culture, but we do have a parallel precedent for saying Cretan culture. You do see also Jesus would speak of the Pharisees as a cultural group, mm-hmm. even though you have exceptions of Gamaliel and Nicodemus. Mm-hmm. You have Paul would talk about Gentiles and Jews as broad cultural groups, even though the things he would say about one or the other don't apply evenly.
Mm-hmm. God in the Old Testament, the Amalekites, God will talk about nations and groups.
Yeah.
And rebuke them. The whole book of Obadiah, right, is a rebuke of the Edomites.
Yeah.
God doesn't feel the need to be like, now, of course, I don't mean every Edomite. Yeah. There's Eddie over there. He's good. But God uses generalizations.
Yeah. So that leads me to the fourth point. So I'll again quote Sauvé. Black culture is wicked. That's and he used Cretans as a parallel to demonstrate the permissibility of that. So I would say biblically permissible, in not out of bounds, but is it really useful, or does it have value? I would say the value is limited. So the fourth thought that I have here, I'm kind of processing this, and I'd love your thoughts on it. But here's my thought. The broader the generalization, the lesser its value. So, and there's two reasons for this. The broader the generalization, the lesser the value. Two reasons. Number one, we're dealing with larger populations now than in Bible times.
Oh, yeah. I was just thinking that same thing. Crete was an island.
Yeah.
It was an island. It was probably the size of Hamilton County.
Yeah. So one of the things that Sauvé used in his clip is like, let's say you have 100 people, and then 80 of them, they have this particular characteristic. Is it fair to say that's true of the whole? I would say, well, if you're talking about 80 and 100 people, yeah. But if you're talking about 80 million and 100 million, same proportion, but you're now talking about 20 million exceptions to the rule, which then makes it less useful as a categorization.
And across a geographical area.
Yes.
So you're talking, the United States is bigger than the entire known world during Paul's time.
That's right.
And so there is a big difference between a black guy in Miami, Florida, and a black guy in Seattle, Washington, and a black guy in Sacramento, California.
Yeah. You know, it's funny you say that. I'm just thinking of this. I remember going to Atlanta, Georgia for a North American Mission Board trip years ago. And I'd been in Cincinnati long enough to kind of get acclimated to Cincinnati culture and to the kind of people that I'm used to seeing. And one thing that struck me when I went to Atlanta is there are a lot of black people in Atlanta, but the black people in Atlanta are generally much more, at least the areas I was in, they seem like pretty like middle class, successful, career-minded, wearing suits and ties. You know, they dress different than what I was used to seeing. And I'm like, this is a different black culture than black culture in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And this is a point that Kevin Briggins brought out, that when you say black culture, that you might be able to do some statistical analysis and say black people do this behavior, but you're dealing with such a massive sample size that the generalizations don't really apply because there's so many variables, which are complicated by the second little subpoint here, is that generalizations are complicated by the internet and social media. And so on social media, you're generally living in the world of narratives. You'll show a viral clip, and the clip tells you a story that reinforces a narrative. And the thing is like, yeah, there may be greater proportions of black people that are doing these things, but to label it black culture is then communicating something where there are so many exceptions, just the number of people that don't fit that characterization, it ends up being unfair and unhelpful. I wouldn't say that it is out of bounds, but I would just say there's probably a better way you could say it. I'll get your thoughts on that because I think I think they say it for a reason, and that's my next point.
Yeah. So I want to distinguish between like unhelpful or untrue or being wrong and being immoral or sinful. So if a guy's like, hey man, here's what I'm looking at this data here from Department of whatever, and it really looks like we got way too many native-born black people committing violent crimes. What is up with black culture? That guy, I mean, if he's saying it the way I think he's saying it, that's not sinful. Then we could figure out, okay, well, is the term black culture actually like, is that
the best label?
Is the best label for what you're describing? So inaccuracy and immorality, or being incorrect in your terminology and being sinful, those are two different things. And the woke, social justice-y Christian who thinks, okay, all right, these guys aren't as racist as whatever I thought. I have no interest in appeasing you. You need your thinking more biblically framed. But the guy who, is using black culture in too elastic a way, despite it not being sinful to use it in that elastic of a way. I just want to correct his terminology. So yeah, I mean, I think that's maybe a way that you and I could relate to as white dudes, American white dudes, would be if a black guy were like, man, all you white people just with your Kid Rock, what the heck? You and I could be like, I don't know any Kid Rock songs.
Well, yeah, let's say describe the Atlanta scenario I was describing before. If I were to hang around Atlanta and just say like that was where I was generally living and hanging out, I might say, what I hear about black culture, I don't know anybody that applies to, because I'm in a middle class, And the thing is, like, one thing that isn't really discussed is it's a subculture, and that really is the issue. There is a subculture. It is typically there's a lot of poverty associated with it, and it is more street culture or gang culture.
Right.
And that's why I asked Kevin Briggins, like, what's an alternative to the word black culture that you would say is a better description? He said street culture, gang culture. I would say poverty is a major driving factor.
But I would put fatherlessness even pre.
Yeah, but fatherless culture, that's a factor. But if you're going to label it,
No. Yeah. You don't have to label it. I'm saying I would put fatherlessness prior to poverty. I'm saying. Even.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. No. Fatherless culture doesn't make sense. I agree. Street does get at it. I think that's a good.
Street is like, you don't have a dad at home. You're out in the street.
Right. And street black culture, I think that is fair. Like, or black street culture, or whatever you want to call it. Like that is, I think that does better capture it. Because again, yes, this is more of a statement of reality. We're talking about 3,000 miles and 350 million people, 3,000 miles east to west of a continent here, and 350 million people or whatever. Like it is much harder to talk about that with the same ease of generality that Paul could when he's talking about an island, Crete, that is probably like the size of Vermont.
Yeah.
And at the time he was talking about it, had a smaller population than Vermont. You and I, we could pretty easily and with a great degree of accuracy talk about Cincinnati. We could be like, the Westchester whites up there, in the way that, and I mean, blacks downtown and OTR, like, because we know what we're talking about. The sample size is small enough that
if I talk about West Siders, there is a type.
100%.
You know what I'm talking about.
If I say white West Side Catholic guy, the average person who lives on my side of town knows exactly. They know where that guy is shopping. They know that guy loves cornhole.
Can picture him in their mind.
Yep, that guy either loves Elder or Purcell or Moeller. Like they know that guy. And yes, whereas if you just say Catholic white guy about the United States, it's such a massive area and such a massive population that I think the generalization loses its power. It loses its accuracy.
Yeah. So there's a thing that there are things that other people will do to me sometimes. And whenever I want to and make a generalization, people are always, well, what about XYZ exception? And I get really annoyed by that because I'm like, you have to make generalizations to be able to think.
Yes.
We have to have categories. So we're not saying, well, what about all these exceptions? What we're saying is like there are these complicating factors. I mentioned two, huge population sizes now compared to Bible times, and the generalizations of or the complications of internet and social media. So I just Googled this. Cincinnati, we said about 50-50 racial makeup, and there is a certain type of black culture that we are familiar with here in Cincinnati. Ogden, Utah, which is where Brian Sauvé lives.
Can I guess? You got the percentage? I'm going to guess the black percentage of Ogden, Utah is 1.9%.
A little low. It's 3%.
Okay.
Approximately 3%. But it's a town of 80, I just had it here, 88,000. So a town of 88,000, Ogden, Utah, 3% of which is black. And so that tells me, okay, like if we're talking about a very, very small number of black people that would live in Ogden, Utah.
It's like 2,000 or something.
Yeah.
1,800.
Yeah, a small number. So I'm like,
it's like one high school in Cincinnati.
an average high school,
right?
It's like, so I wonder, like, okay, if that's where you live, and that's and I know nothing. I've met Brian Sauvé once. I don't have a relationship with him, so I am just conjecturing here. So, Brian, I know you're a regular listener, you're a big fan, so I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just conjecturing here. If that's your upbringing, it's like, okay, Ogden, Utah, you don't know very many black people. So what is your experience of black people? It's viral clips on the internet that tell a story, and the story has some truth to it, and we don't want to ignore that truth.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's statistics to back it up. But to take all of those factors and give it a label that it generalizes further than what I think is helpful, because there are so many good, godly black people that, or not even godly, just good, decent black people that be like, hey, I hate that too. And it comes across like I hear when somebody talks about whiteness, and I'm just like, I dismiss it. I'm like, that's stupid. It's like you have nothing to say.
Right. You and I don't have anything in common with some guy at a NASCAR event in Alabama.
Yeah.
I love the South, but I'm not from the South, and I don't like NASCAR.
Yeah.
Like,
So that brings me to the last point here. Again, I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I'm going to say a phenomena, and I think the phenomenon is a character in this story. I don't know if it's a character in the Brian Sauvé, Doug Wilson, Kevin Brigham story, but it is a character in stories like this, and that is what this is my label. I'm calling it anti-fragile marketing. So the anti-fragile concept is you take bad things that happen to you and you turn them into strengths. And in this case, controversy is something that is bad, and you turn it into a strength, and you can market around it. And so there is a New Christendom Press. I think Moscow does this. They turn their controversies into marketing opportunities.
Yeah.
And so what you do is you overstate your case for the purpose of getting the controversy, and then you turn that controversy, you get eyeballs and clicks, and you turn that controversy into marketing opportunities. I'm not saying that they're doing that because I don't know, but I'm saying that is a thing that some people do. And I think if we're discerning these sort of controversies, watch this, because it's a common thing. You have the initial thing somebody says, which is outlandish enough to get controversy, but just reasonable enough to be able to deny the worst versions of it. You get lots of clicks and eyeballs. Everybody's paying attention. Then you issue a clarification when everybody's watching you. And in the clarification, you present yourself as the most reasonable, thoughtful man. And everybody thinks like, oh, that's not bad. And then I'm like, well, here's my Amazon page, and you can purchase my products or whatever. And it's like it becomes a marketing opportunity. Again, I'm not saying they're doing that, but I am saying that can be done, that is done, and that's a character in this story.
yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. If you can't already tell from my tone of voice, I don't think anybody should do that. So I'm not going to try to make a well-reasoned biblical argument against it here now with the limited time that we've got. But in general, it's personally not appealing to me. I would not sleep as well if I did that. I would not be able to look myself in the mirror as well as a Christian man if I did that. And I think I'm onto something there. I think that's right. I think that instinct I'm describing is not just some personal idiosyncrasy of mine. I think I'm thinking like a mature Christian who's going to give an account to God in like 10 minutes. Because our lives are a vapor. You're going to be dead before you know it. And you're going to be giving an account to God. I don't want to be a troll. Like, I don't want to check this out, guys. Check out my hot take on blacks, and then get a bunch of clicks, and then walk it back with all my qualifications. And your reputation is worth more than that, but also just your soul is worth more than that. Mm-hmm. Like, you are an eternal being who's going to give an account to God for every word that you say. I don't want to try to get eyeballs that way. So I don't think you should either. So if you're a listener and the Hot Take Express feels like an attractive train ride for you, I would say don't do that. Don't get on it. Make your point. Say what you want to say on the internet or in writing or in podcast form, or whatever you want to say. Say it truthfully. But to try to do I'm going to say it in the most scandalous way possible so as to get other people to watch me. I not only do I think that's not a good thing to do in light of you're going to give an account to God, I also think it's bad for your soul.
Yeah.
It trains your soul in the art of getting attention. Mm-hmm. And I don't think your soul should be trained in the art of getting attention.
Yeah.
I don't think that's how Jesus wants us to live.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's a lot that could be developed a lot as far as getting attention, not getting attention, good ways. Is it permissible under some circumstances? Are there good ways to do it? That's beyond our scope here.
Yeah.
But I think as far as there's a thing that can be harmful to your soul, to just be like, even if one could make the case that there's a good way to seek attention, and for a good reason. There's a heck of a lot of baggage and soul harming things that could come with it. And I write things, I post things online, and there's a dopamine hit whenever you're getting attention and people are praising you and stuff, and that's something I need to just keep in the front of my mind before the Lord, to not let this just be an ego fuel thing, but like, Lord, why am I doing this? I'm writing this because I want to influence. I'm writing this because I want truth and reason and biblical discernment being entered into a public conversation. And the byproduct of that will be attention. And there's a need for some degree of attention to do it. And yet there's certainly something I know can be harmful to my soul that I need to be attentive to. And that's a good caution that you offered there, just that we need to be not human clickbait.
I'll throw one last thing out there too. There is a difference between a Tucker Carlson or something who is not leading an institution and certainly not shepherding souls.
Yeah.
And, pick your person, Al Mohler, R.C. Sproul, John MacArthur, or even just like you as a father, or you as, leading a business or whatever. Somebody who is leading, somebody who is shepherding something. I want to offer this to you, listener. There is a degree of seriousness you lose in the eyes of good men when you do that. When you play that clickbait trolley game and good men can tell you say things to get attention. The typical good Christian man, whether he acknowledges it or says it out loud or not, the level of seriousness with which he takes you goes down a little bit. Mm-hmm. It is there's a reason why George Washington evokes what he does in us 250 years later and what he did in his men back then. There's a level of seriousness with which someone comports himself that instills in other men the confidence, I can trust this man with my soul and the souls of the people around me. I can follow him. And, we may love the Mark Twain or the Tucker Carlson and their pithy sayings, but they don't. That kind of personality is unlikely to elicit the same level of, I will follow this man into battle and unto death.
Yeah. It's a good word. Well, that's, we'll put a pin in this one. I don't feel the need to add to what you said there. That is a great word. One thing I will just, commend to you. I mentioned Kevin Briggins.
Yeah.
He's a good man. And like I said, I don't know him well, but I've gotten to know him some. I have followed his work and his podcast. I interviewed him once on my podcast. And when it comes to issues of race and thinking about race, he is a black man that is not afraid to critique his own, and to do so with brutal honesty and clarity. And he's a conservative. He's a guy that he's like us. He's a Reformed Baptist, I believe. If he's not an elder, he ought to be in this church, but he's a good man. So if you have a chance he hosts a podcast called Off Code with Monique Duson, and the premise of the podcast is black people don't want to air out their dirty laundry in public, so they protect, and so they're on code. And so in this podcast, a black man and a black woman, they go off code and they talk about dirty laundry in public, and it's very helpful. And they do so with biblical insight and good. He's a director, I think, for Center for Biblical Unity is the organization. He has an official role, maybe director or something, but good man. So check him out if you want more information about or want a good follow for cultural and issues of race. Anything else before we head it out?
Well, okay. So there's like 3 points I want to make, but I can do them in like 2 minutes.
All right, you bring us home. You have the last word.
All right. So I don't think we got to explore the problem too much as far as our own observations of it. So here's what I want to say as a guy who's lived in America for 40 years. It's not like I've been to every state in the union, but I feel qualified enough to be like, okay, I'm pretty sure these are true. Number one, we did already say this. There are too many native-born black people committing violent crimes. We have to acknowledge that. Yeah. There is too high a percentage of native people born in these United States who are black who are committing violent crimes. Number two, there are too many native-born black people who are growing up in fatherless homes. And you can pair that with abortion probably because one is the fruit and the other is the root, or they're connected at least organically. And this is increasingly the case in white and Hispanic families too. But that you're not going to have what you want to have without that one that I just said getting resolved. When boys and girls are growing up without dad married to mom and dad in the home, you're going to continually getting sexual sin, violent crime, things like that. And when I go to the store in my neighborhood and I see shorts that are like Band-Aids and belly buttons exposed, shirts that are like bras and smell weed like in waves coming at me from the car next to me. It's like the odds are very good. I know your mom and dad are not married, and dad is not a constant presence in your life. I would bet $100 that dad is not married to your mom and a constant presence in your life. Until we get dads back in homes, this is going to be almost. I can almost guarantee it's not going to get fixed.
Good word.
And then thirdly, we do have too much of a sense of entitlement in this country. And particularly on government programs, I am entitled to money from the government. But even just like I am entitled to what I want at this store or this restaurant right now, and I'm gonna like have a nasty attitude if I don't get it. And so I remember being a manager at a restaurant here in the Cincinnati area, and the servers had a code word for, even the black servers had a code word for when a black family got seated or a black customer got seated, because they did not want to take that table because of that kind of attitude. And that sense of entitlement it's not just unique to native-born black people in the United States, but I think it is higher there than among other subgroups. But that sense of entitlement is it's bad for your soul. It's bad for your kids. It's bad for your family. It's bad for you, bad for your neighbors. It's just bad across the board. That sense of you are going to give me what I'm owed. And the government is going to give me what I'm owed. It's just bad across the board. So handful of things that I believe are true that are worthwhile knowing. I'll send us out. Listener, I hope that you, regardless of what color your skin is, I hope that you know and love the Lord Jesus Christ, for he makes all of us in his image and is a good and worthwhile Savior.
Thank you for listening to the Current Reality Podcast. Feel free to send us some feedback at currentrealitypodcast@gmail.com. If you found this episode helpful, consider leaving us a positive review and sharing it with a friend. The Current Reality Podcast is brought to you by King's Domain in Cincinnati, Ohio.